everybody, my name is Tanya and today we're going to talk about Jonathan Strange Mr Norrell by Susanna Clarke. So this review has been a long time coming. This was my October pick for the Booktube Recommends Project and was recommended to me by the lovely Erica from Erica Able, and I started this one in October but I didn't actually finish it until December, which I guess is somewhat understanding given its size, but I took way too long to read this. But I finally finished and now it's taken me way too long to film the review for it, but I'm finally here. So this really is quite an impossible book to describe because it's so large, it's so sprawling, and it's so varied in what happens in it that it's hard to kind of grab onto something to really describe it as. Basically, I guess in essentials, this is the story of two men, Jonathan Strange and Mr Norrell, who happen to be basically the only two magicians living in England. And so this is set in the early 19th century, kind of the time of the Napoleonic Wars. And as we open, Mr Norrell, Gilbert Norrell, is kind of the one and only practicing magician. And he's very much a recluse. Nobody really knows that he exists until he reveals himself to a group of theoretical magicians, so people who are, studying the history of magic but not really believing that magic is a thing that exists now. They believe it died away years ago, but they study the theory of magic, and Mr Norrell reveals himself as, a practicing magician, the only practicing magician. Mr Norrell is kind of wanting to redeem the good name of magic in England, while at the same time not wanting to have to deal with society and, people, and lock himself away. He's a very kind of antisocial, interesting kind of character. He's not necessarily very likable. He's very selfish. He kind of has bought up all of the books on magic and he hoards them in his library and he lets nobody see them, and he is approached to kind of use his magic for good, and he won't consent to help people, but he also wants, the acclaim of being a practicing magician. So we start and we kind of follow Mr Norrell for the beginning of the book, then we kind of shift and discover that maybe there's a second magician, and so we become acquainted with Jonathan Strange, who is a much younger man. Mr Norrell is quite an elderly man, and he's quite a grumpy elderly man, and then we meet Jonathan Strange, who's quite young and has been very unaware of magic and his status as a magician. He comes into his knowledge and begins to study under the tutelage of Mr Norrell, and so he is being very shaped by Mr Norrell's views and his restrictions. Again, that selfishness extends to Jonathan Strange, and so Mr Norrell doesn't want to share his books with him. He only lets him look at certain volumes in his library, and very much tries to shape his view of magic and what magic can do. As time goes on, that tension between them kind of starts to build, and Jonathan Strange kind of chafes under the restrictions being placed on him by Mr Norrell, and relations between them get to breaking point. All hell breaks loose kind of in the storyline, and so much more happens than that, but in very basic terms, this is the story of two men, Jonathan Strange and Mr Norrell, two magicians in England, and the relationship between them. Now, I've heard really, really good things about this, and I've heard really, really bad things about this. And I can see both sides. Now, I did absolutely adore this. For all it took me a very, very long time to read, when I was reading it, I was loving it. But at the same time, I can see why people wouldn't enjoy this. It's very long. It's quite, wordy and mundane in its descriptions. There are a lot of tangents that maybe, you wonder what the significance is in the greater picture of things. A lot that probably could be cut out that isn't really necessary. The characters are not particularly likable. For all that I came to care about them, most of the people in this book, there really isn't many people that you can really root for and really like. I can really see why people wouldn't like it, but a lot of the reasons that others wouldn't like it are some of the things that I really loved about it. So I really enjoyed the characters for all that they were dislikable. I really enjoyed the tangents and the kind of complexity and the scope of this book in terms of the offshoots of the side characters and the side plots. I really enjoyed reading about all of those, and it all kind of comes together to create this quite rich world, but at the same time it's being described in quite a dry way. And so that happens to really appeal to me. I love great, fast, action-packed books as well, but I do really enjoy slow, descriptive reads like this one, and it just all came together and worked for me, but I can see that it would go very wrong. So I think for a judgment call on whether you would enjoy this one, if you don't enjoy slower reads, longer reads, reads that are maybe quite dry in their writing style, not a lot of action for all that a lot of stuff happens in here, then maybe this one isn't for you. If you love that kind of thing, I think definitely give this one a go. I am so pleased to have finally read this one now. It's been sitting on my shelf for way too long, so thank you again to Erica for getting me to read this one. So if you read this one, let me know in the comments which side of the fence you fall on. Did you really love it? Did you really hate it? Is it just a meh book to you? As always, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.